Well, guys, I guess you would say that I'm in trouble because we're getting ready to do some towing with this Gladiator EcoDiesel again, and everybody says it's not going to work out. We're going to overheat, we're going to have problems. And look, since the last time that we towed this trailer, I've done a lot of things that have been detrimental to fuel economy and efficiency, like this winch bumper, 12,000 pound winch mounted right there in front of the grill. We got a 2-inch lift on here now with 35-inch mud terrain tires. So we've added a little bit of weight, a little bit of resistance. We've taken away some aerodynamics, loading up the coolers and stuff in the back of the truck. Starting to load up the camping gear here inside. Gonna put the ATVs in here and strap them down. Got our mattresses to sleep in. This trailer's a big one. Got some firewood here. Pretty decent little stash of firewood that we're gonna put in the back. This trailer is a 8.5 by 24. You guys have seen it before. 7-foot interior height. So it's a big boy, and it catches a whole lot of wind going down the road. And it just so happens to be a windy week because we've got a cold front headed this way. 5,200 pound axles with brakes on both axles. I like this trailer because it gives us a lot of room to do whatever we want to do. So yes, I do have a weight distribution set up. Got the Husky Centerline TS on here with my emergency brake cable, safety chains. Got the Kurt Echo trailer brake controller hooked up under there. So I got all the safety gear. Anyway, we're getting ready to go do some more towing and some riding and camping out in the woods with this big trailer and this diesel Jeep. And I'm going to show you guys again that these trucks do the job really well without overheating. I did go ahead and gas up the ATVs. I checked the oil, make sure that everything is looking good from the maintenance perspective. The oil on the 250 over there is actually a little bit dirty looking. So after this ride, we'll have to change the oil on that one. This one gets changed at 100 hours. That's the first service interval on the Rancher. And we're coming up on like 60 hours right now. Let me rephrase that. Miles, 100 miles, and I'm coming up on 60 miles. Let me get that straight. So this one will have to go for service pretty soon after we get back also. But yeah, it should be a fun trip. We're gonna go back down to the land between the lakes. That's where he wanted to go, and to be honest with you, it's my favorite place in the whole world too. So we're gonna go down there and have a good time. All right, so it rained overnight, but that's okay. It's gonna be a beautiful day. Clouds are starting to clear out already, and I think we're pretty much loaded up here. Just getting the last few little odds and ends. The ATVs are in here. Of course, you can't see them because it's still kind of dark. And we got few camping supplies. I tell you what, man, I still love this trailer. Primitive camping at its best. You know, we got our cabinet here for our goodies, plates and bowls and spoons and everything. Nice little countertop here to work on to make sandwiches and stuff. Down underneath there, I got my microwave still, so we can do some frozen goodies. Even got a TV in here, guys, and a TV antenna to put up on a pole. Once we get to the campsite, I just drive the pole on the ground and put the TV antenna on it, and boom, we've got television. You know, because it's October, so now it's getting dark a little bit earlier, and the rule is you're not supposed to ride after dark. So we'll go back to camp, make a fire, make some dinner. If it starts raining or something, then we can watch a little TV. But anyhow, we're all loaded up. Next stop is Walmart, because we have to go get some gas for the machines, fill up our jugs, and probably top this thing off with diesel fuel, and then we'll be ready to go. Ooh, that doesn't look very good. There we go, that's more like it. So we're headed down the road here. 10.5 miles per gallon is what it's showing. So realistically, I'm looking at like 9.5 or 10, which all things considered is not really all that bad. Temperature has climbed to 70 now. It's been a little bit higher than that. It's fluctuating some. We're gonna go back well into the 80s again this afternoon. There's a look at where the temperatures are. Coolant 224, perfectly in check. Oil temperature at 249. Trans is hanging out around 200. Hopefully it's focused in enough that you can see that. We're going uphill at the moment. I had the cruise set to 65 miles an hour. I backed off about 2 miles an hour. I'm going to try to go up some more here in a minute, because the funny thing about this is the transmission programming is kind of funky in here. On the Ram, I didn't notice this. It had the exact same powertrain, but I didn't notice this. On the Jeep, it likes to hunt between 5th and 6th. If you set it to 65 miles an hour, it just goes back and forth. It can't figure out which gear it wants to be in. Excuse me, and that's not good for the trans. So I backed it down to 63 miles an hour, and now it's holding 6th gear just fine. On the straight stretches, it'll go to 7th gear, sometimes 8th gear. But pulling up these hills like this, it hangs out in 5th and 6th all the time, which is still fantastic. So again, you know, you can see the temperatures. 250 degrees oil temperature is perfectly fine, especially for a diesel engine, and especially for today's modern synthetic oils. Nothing, excuse me, I'm getting choked up here. There's nothing to worry about there at all. And the coolant temperature, still looking fantastic. Transmission, the transmission on these things never gets hot. You know, this 8 HP 75 is a fantastic transmission, and it just, you can pull whatever you want, it never gets hot. Looks like we got a Chevy truck over there pulled over, which is pretty common out on the roads. See a lot of that. But anyway, if I can get the camera to stay focused here, everything is doing just fine. Now here in about, I don't know, like 5 or 10 more miles, we're going to get into some steeper hills and some really long grades, and I suspect it still won't be a problem, but we'll check when we get back down there. The other thing you'll notice is I'm not giving any input to the steering wheel hardly at all. This thing had that really bad issue about wandering when I first got it, and now we've got 70, almost 7,100 miles on it, and it drives as straight as an arrow. So, you know, is it the leveling kit that changed the caster a little bit? Is it the track bar that allowed me to perfectly center the axle under the front end? I don't know. Or is it just with time these things wear in a little bit and loosen up, and you know, like the parts are tight from the factory, the joints, the steering stabilizer, everything is brand new and it's all tight, and it won't let the steering wheel go back to center, and then after several thousand miles it all starts to loosen up and then it drives normally, you know, because I've had 2 of these that have done that now. So there's something else to mention. I don't think there's really a mechanical issue with these things like people say there is. You just need to give it some time. But anyway, pulling up these hills here, all my temps look real good. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. Maybe we need to turn the air conditioning on. Maybe if I turn the AC on, it'll get hot. Probably not, because I had the AC on back in the summertime when we were towing this same trailer with more weight on it, and it was 100 degrees outside. We had the air conditioning on that day, and it didn't overheat either. So I don't know, but I'll wait till we get to these really long grades and steeper hills down here. And there's my message about my diesel exhaust fluid. Oh man, the camera's not focused here. It said at 500 miles the engine's not going to restart, so I'm going to have to stop and get some diesel exhaust fluid down here at the truck stop. But anyway, there's a first check-in. When we get to the really rough part down here, we'll check in again. Alright, there's another update. This is the really bad part of the trip. So a guy yesterday on the JL Wrangler forum said that here in Kentucky we don't have 6% grades that go for a mile or more. That's what he said. Well, we have 6%, 7%, 8% grades, whatever you want over here. And they go for several miles at times. I mean, we've been pulling up this hill for a while now, and this hill goes as far as the eye can see. The semi-trucks are pulling over in the right lane and slowing down. So this guy here doesn't have a load, so that's why he's able to pass me. Well, he's got a small little load here. But anyway, temperatures are still looking good. 257 on the oil, 235 on the coolant. The coolant temperature's warming up a little bit, as you can see there, but it's still not to the point where it's in the danger category or the truck is derating power or anything like that. I mean, it's still doing really well. Transmission still at 203. 203 is awesome for transmission temperature. I'm super happy with that. I think we are finally getting to the point now where this hill is starting to level off. So we're catching up with these guys. Maybe they'll get on out of the way now so we don't have to go around them and pass them. Mileage is down to 9.9 miles per gallon on the cluster there. So the other thing about it is, and here's the reason why I think the mileage is so bad, we're driving into a headwind too. So not only do we have this massive trailer behind us and the winch in front of the bumper and the big mud tires and all that stuff working against us, we've also got a pretty strong headwind today. We're driving west into the wind. Like I said, there's a cold front kind of headed this way, so it's pretty breezy today. So that's not helping matters any either. But you know, the truck is doing great. Where I've got it set, you know, just below the speed limit, and it's maintaining speed perfectly fine. Like I said, hanging out 5th gear, 6th gear on these hills, and then 7th and 8th on the straight stretches. This, you know, east of the Rocky Mountains, this is just about as hard as you can possibly push one of these Jeeps with the EcoDiesel. The only other thing you could do is go to really, really high altitude. You know, those guys that are 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 feet altitude. I mean, you get up in there and any truck's gonna overheat and have issues, you know, if you push it like this. So it's not fair to say that the EcoDiesel in the Jeep has inherent design issues, because it just flat out doesn't. I mean, you can see we got the great big trailer behind us, and the temperatures are all looking good over there and well within spec. So again, I don't know what else I can do to make this thing overheat and have issues. These things just don't have issues. That's all there is to it. So now we're gonna head on down to the truck stop and try to find some diesel exhaust fluid. Well, we successfully made it to the truck stop for some diesel exhaust fluid. There we go. That looks a little bit better. It was telling me that I was down to like 200 miles to go, and it was gonna make the truck not restart again. So now we can hit the road again. I put a little bit more diesel fuel in it too, because it was down to under a half a tank already. This thing really drinks the fuel when you load it up, but then again, pretty much any truck does. So get my off-road pages going here. I like these off-road pages because you can see all the gauges at once. Got the climate controls going too, because it's starting to warm up outside a little bit. That is not accurate. It's way beyond 70 now. You got to be going down the road for the ambient temperature to update. It's having a little bit of a difficulty pulling up the off-road pages. But anyway, we're going to get on down the road. We checked the straps on our ATVs back there in the trailer, made sure they were all looking good. So here we go. Well, we made it. Didn't take, well, it actually did take a while. It's normally like a 4-hour drive. Today it took almost 5. We had to make quite a few stops for fuel and exhaust fluid and food and ice. I forgot to get ice for the cooler. But since it's a Tuesday, we're kind of all alone. Got a nice camping spot here. It's beautiful down here. Every time we come down and shoot a video, I always tell you guys, if you haven't been to Land Between the Lakes, you really need to come down here because it is absolutely beautiful. It's a different kind of terrain than you see anywhere else in Kentucky. very flat, a lot of tall, you know, old looking forests. And Kentucky Lake is about 200 yards that way. So makes for an awesome time. So we got to get the ATVs unloaded and set up a little bit of camp here. Nice thing about having the trailers, we don't have to worry about tents and all that. So that saves a lot of time. And then we'll be ready to ride. Much of the year this is all underwater, but from October through March TVA drops the water level, and then you can come out on this sandbar, and you can also go around Kentucky Lake along the shore during the fall and the winter time. So we're going to try that out today. So that bridge out there is the Egner's Ferry Bridge that carries US Highway 68 over Kentucky Lake. And that's the one right there, right over in that area is where it was struck by a barge in the middle of the night several years ago. And the whole bridge over on this end of it fell into the lake. By a miracle of God, there was no traffic on the bridge when that happened, so no cars fell into the water, but it's just an absolute nightmare scenario though. So we're going to go on around the lake here until we get to the area that we call the mud flats, which is exactly what you would expect. It's a big open area that's just nothing but mud. Now, it used to be years ago, if you came down here, especially on the weekend, you'd see all kinds of people out here in trucks and Jeeps and buggies, ATVs, amphibious vehicles, you name it. They'd be out here in the water. It was a lot of fun, but not really sure what changed over the years, but the Forest Service changed the rules for one thing. Kind of ran a lot of people off. keep doing that, he might make it out. Let it eat, let it eat. I'm gonna tell you something right now, that little 250X right there, that thing will go a lot of places that you wouldn't ever imagine it would go. I was just saying that little 250X will go a lot of places you would never imagine, especially after we put those new hole shot tires on the back. Those things dig better than a mud tire. I've never seen anything like that before. Good job, buddy. I thought I was gonna have to come out there with a winch line. All right, we found a nice little spot here overlooking the lake to take a break. So let me give you some thoughts now that I've had an opportunity to put significant miles. We've already ridden about 50 miles since we got here yesterday. So here are some thoughts on this 2021 Honda Rancher that I picked up. Now, of course, this thing is still in bone stock condition, aside from the winch that I put on it and the snow plow mount, which I'll get to in just a minute. So let's talk about the things I don't like about it. First of all, the handle grips are terrible. They're unforgiving. They will eat your hands alive. I do have riding gloves, but even still, I'm starting to get blisters on my hands. These things will just wear you out. So I'm gonna have to find some softer handle grips for it. Also, ground clearance. This thing has the lowest ground clearance of any machine I think I've ever had. Now, granted, I do have that snowplow mount under there, but you can see it's only maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. So it's not really eating up a whole lot of ground clearance. And I have hit so many rocks and stumps on these trails. You'll be going along and you straddle something that you've always straddled in the past, except this machine will hang up on it and it'll go bam and scare you to death. That's happened to me a bunch of times. I mean, he's clearing stuff on this 250 that I can't clear. It's just ridiculous. So I guess it's a combination of these itty bitty tires and that solid rear axle and just the way that the frame is built, basically. So I'm gonna have to make some changes to this thing and get it up in the air at least a couple of inches to make it even trail worthy, to be honest. All right, so let's talk about a few things that I really do like about the machine. It's got a lot of torque, so that's kind of a plus and a minus. This thing is geared really low. I mean, we're cruising around out here and I'm in like 4th gear most of the time, and we're going 15, 20 miles an hour, and I'm still in 4th gear most of the time, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just geared super low. 1st gear is kind of like a crawler gear. 2, 3, and 4 are really, really low, way lower than they need to be. And then 5th gear is pretty decent. So it's geared really, really low, which is, I'm not real happy about that, but it does have a lot of torque. You don't have to give it a whole lot of throttle to cruise up these hills. You know, this place has got a lot of steep hills and everything, and it'll just motor right up the hills, no sweat. So I do like the torque on it. The tires, even though they're tiny, they seem to have good traction. They've pulled me through some pretty sticky mud. They do really good in the dirt. I've kind of tossed it around, thrown it around a little bit, and they're doing a really good job. So I'm pretty happy with them. I just wish that they were bigger. Since this is a gear shift machine, it doesn't have any of that slop and noise that the CVT machines have when you're going down a hill. Every CVT machine I've ever had makes a lot of racket and noise going downhill. You know, like there's a lot of slack in it or something, or just the way that the design is, you know, it just makes a lot of noise. This, being a gear machine, obviously doesn't do that. One thing I wish that they had done, see, the TRX 250 that he has a real clutch. It's semi-automatic, just like the Rancher, but it also has a real clutch, so you can make smooth upshifts and smooth downshifts. The Rancher doesn't have that. Instead, they use this handle for a rear brake, And what I have found is it's really hard to downshift this thing without making the driveline jar itself. Pretty much what I have found is that I have to maintain a little bit of throttle, just a little bit of throttle on the thumb throttle over there when I'm downshifting. And sometimes it takes a combination of braking and throttle at the same time to downshift. That's the only way I can do it and make it smooth, which is really annoying because I'm afraid I'm going to end up tearing something up. I mean, it'll jar hard enough that the rear tires momentarily slide every time you downshift, unless you do it that way. So I do wish they had a real clutch lever over there, and then that lever over there could just be for the front and rear brakes like the Arctic Cat machines do, which is the way it should be. Be a lot more user-friendly that way. Anyway, the machine's doing a good job though. We've ridden it pretty hard, ridden it pretty aggressively. It's been really good on fuel. I put maybe a gallon in it. We've ridden 50 miles. I think I put a gallon back in it last time we were at the campsite. So it's doing great on fuel. Like I said, plenty of torque, and I got the suspension set at the softest setting that you possibly can put it on, and it feels pretty good. I'm able to take the whoops and the rocky trails at a pretty decent amount of speed, and it doesn't want to like jar me off the machine. So considering that it has a solid rear axle, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I wish it had a little more storage. Pretty much this container back here is all you've got. You do have a small one in the front, but it's not really useful for a whole lot because it's so small. I'd like to see more storage on the machine. But overall, you know, it's a pretty good machine, and you know, it's been doing a good job for me out here. The main thing I need to do is just get it up in the air. I've got to add a couple of inches somewhere, whether it be a really small lift kit or some bigger tires or something. I got to get more ground clearance under this thing because I'm getting tired of getting high centered on rocks at, you know, 20 miles an hour. It scares you to death when that happens. But anyway, you want to head on back? There's a really nice red Jeep here. It's like a LJ Rubicon, which is just super sweet. You don't see them very much anymore, and we've been trying to find them again. We caught up with them yesterday on the trails, and we can't find them. We know they're out here somewhere today, but we just can't find out which trail they're on. So we're gonna try and go find them. But anyway, it's been fun so far. The weather's been awesome, and we've had a good time. You can still see the remnants of the housing that used to be in here before this was all turned into the lake system by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the World War II era. This used to be an old silo. It's kind of fallen apart now, but what's left of it, people come and paint. They put their graffiti on it when they're up here. Kind of a shame, but what else are you gonna do with it at this point, right? But it's the history of this area here at Land Between the Lakes is kind of neat, because this used to be, you know, there were towns and cities in here along the river before they flooded it to make the hydroelectric plant down the river there. So once you start learning about that stuff, it's kind of cool. So it's another awesome, beautiful morning, except for this. So we got to playing around out here on these mud flats, and I bit off a little bit more than I could chew and buried this rancher. And I've got a winch, but the problem is his little TRX 250 doesn't have enough weight, and so when I start reeling in the winch, it just pulls it backwards. I even got on the front bumper and stood up on it, and it still just pulls it. So unprepared is what I am. I don't have a shovel to dig it out with. I don't have anything solid to put into the ground to hook my winch to. Just totally unprepared. And since it's the middle of the week, there's nobody else out here at the off-road park. So one of those things you don't want to do. Don't do what I did. But we do have a plan B though. I can go back to the campsite and get the Jeep and bring it down here and pull this out, no problem. It's kind of a pain because I have to unhook it from the trailer and all that, but it might come to that here in just a few minutes. So yeah, it's, you know, I don't mind going back to camp to get the truck if I have to, but it's just with that trailer, with that particular trailer, it's a little bit more work because you have to unhook all the weight distribution bars and all that kind of stuff, you know, that goes along with the sway control system. So, you know, it takes about 15 minutes to do all that, which again, not a big deal, but it could be better. Ideally, you would just not drive into mud holes that you can't get out of. So anyway, we'll be down here in just a few minutes. You know, one of the things that a lot of people on the forums have been complaining about with these Gladiator EcoDiesels is they say the front suspension is way too soft and it will let the truck just bottom completely out on, even if you just hit a small speed bump in town or something. I haven't noticed that. This one, when it was bone stock, it never had that issue. And this is an Overland with a lot of options, so it's a heavy pig. You know, it's almost the same weight as a Rubicon. And it never did bottom out. And of course, now I've got that leveling kit on the front, so it raises those bump stops up even more. So it's not a problem, but I have to say, I think the suspension rides pretty good on this truck. I mean, it's firm when it needs to be firm, but it's also cushiony when it needs to be soft, if that makes any sense. So I think it rides pretty good. This is the first time that I've had this particular truck out on the trails, and it's pretty nice, actually. You know, I've spent the last 3 days getting my kidneys beat out on that ATV, so it's kind of nice to sit in this seat and ride down the trails like this. I might have to do this more often. That thing is more stuck than I thought. All right. Time for four-wheel drive then. There we go. Man, that thing was actually pretty stuck. All right, guys, well, we're back home again, and it was a fun trip. The weather was perfect. You know, it's about 15 or 20 degrees warmer than it should be in October for this time of the year. It's really nice. That's going to change tomorrow, but that's another story for another time. So the weather was awesome. We had a great time. We checked out all the trails, all the ones that we could anyway. Kind of had the place to ourselves because that's the first time that I had really gone down there in the middle of the week. Usually we do like a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe even Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But this time we went Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we kind of had the off-road park to ourselves. So that was kind of neat too. The truck did a fantastic job. Can't say enough great things about this truck, especially with that Centerline TS weight distribution and sway control system. I mean, it just cruises right down the road as straight as an arrow. Doesn't have any wander at all, no play at all. I mean, it really drives great. It truly does. So I'm super happy with this. The only complaint that I have with this truck is the transmission programming, because if you set the cruise at like 65 miles an hour, it wants to hunt back and forth between 5th gear and 6th gear constantly. If you hit any incline at all, it'll just shift back and forth 5, 6, 5, 6. I mean, literally that fast, 5, 6, 5, 6. And that's not what you want. I mean, that's bad for the transmission. So some kind of weird thing going on there with the transmission programming that I wish they would fix. But you can shift this into manual mode and then it stops doing that. So at least there's an option there. And some aftermarket tuning is going to become available pretty soon, which I may take a look at. But other than that, as far as power, fuel economy, all things considered, was great. Handling, I mean, the truck does a fantastic job, even with that great big 24-foot trailer. So there you have it. I got to shake down the Honda Rancher, shake down the Jeep Gladiator EcoDiesel a little more. Had a great time with my son for fall break. And now we're just awaiting the cooler weather. Next thing you know, it's going to be snowing out here. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk to you later.